Hey, everybody, welcome back. Believe it or not, it is time for the final 2022 State Final Edition wrap up, we'll call it, for the latest Third and Leng podcast. EDGYTIM here, along with the man. You know him, you might love him. I don't know. Sure, why not? We'll go with that. Matt Leng joins us, and Matt, we're a little, about 4 or 5 days from the state title games, and again, everybody coming down from a terrific weekend. Just your overall impressions. We're obviously going to go through 1A through 4A and talk about our thoughts from those games, but just your general consensus thought about the games from this past weekend.
Well, I had a blast. I was there, and my son was able to enjoy it with me. I like the University of Illinois. I like it being there. I like DeKalb also too, but Champaign's right in my wheelhouse. It's right in my neighborhood. I was able to be there with my son, introduce him to a lot of people, a lot of coaches. I feel like that's important. I think that the big story with the whole weekend was we had unbelievable weather. Number one, I think that was probably the main thing. And then that provided for a high level of play. Everything from the 1A game that really turned into a tough, gritty game in the second half to, a game that I kind of predicted I thought was going to be excellent, and it went beyond excellent, in my opinion, in 2A. The 3A, the powerhouse the IC was, to the final goodbye for Ken Leonard, and it just turned out to be I think a great weekend for IHSA. I think they ran it perfectly, and I think there was a lot of positives, and so I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. But I think overall, coming back, again, I keep going back to the whole thing with COVID. And I kind of feel like football is making a comeback, and we're finally flexing our muscles and getting back there. I don't know if we're quite there, but I think this past weekend, I think we showed why we have a good setup and a good system.
One of the things I want to get into, and there are different. We're going to go game for game and give you our thoughts on each game. But the overall, you mentioned the weather was fantastic. There was no doubt about it. You couldn't ask for better weather, especially coming off frigid semifinal that we all had statewide. I mean, it was rough. And again, in the 50s, low to mid 50s, and even the night games, the 4A night game and the 8A night game, very, very tolerable. Winds were kind of low. We didn't get the swirling winds and what have you, which you usually get at Memorial. So thought it worked out fantastic. I guess, again, this is one of the hangups I've had all year, and I don't know if this is my old man get off my lawn moment, but I'm just going to share it anyway because, a lot of the other old men get off my lawn that I ran into over the weekend basically had the same concerns that I had. Matt, that's attendance, and especially on Saturday. And I know obviously Friday was your big day, and I was there both days, Friday and Saturday, but boy, Saturday in particular was not a great attendance day for IHSA State Finals. And it started in the playoffs. It started in the early rounds of the playoffs from what my observations had been. That all of a sudden the crowds just went away. The regular season I thought was fantastic. We had great crowds in the regular season. So I don't know if it's my old man showing that I still think people should physically go to the games and attend and be part of the tremendous atmosphere that is IHSA football, or do I need to be a bit more flexible and understand this is a new time and a new way, and there's new technology, and that people, one way or another, I think I would agree with the fact that people are watching and consuming high school football as much, if not even more so than recently in the past. But I don't know that because I can't physically see. I can physically see who's in the stands. I can't physically see who's sitting at home. And unfortunately, we will never get that information out of IHSA. So should we be concerned that we're seeing less butts in the seats? Or is it a combination of both? I would love to know your thoughts on this because It's something that continues to kind of gripe at me a little bit. And I'm all about the atmosphere and the home field and people in the stands. It's the one of the beauty of high school footballs. But I guess what I'm asking, Matt, is am I being the old man, get off my lawn, a little bit of both, or is this a concern?
Well, I have a little bit of a concern too. I mean, I'm kind of one of those get off my lawn type of guys too. You know, I was fortunate enough. I'm going to switch into basketball. I went to a basketball tournament with Eric Lyons over to El Paso, and that was good for Coach Lyons and I to be there. There was fun being in that gymnasium and watching basketball. People were ready for basketball to get in the gymnasium. I know where this isn't a basketball show, but I'm going to purposely make an effort to be out there in those gymnasiums to watch kids.
Yep.
I'm going to watch my daughter cheer at her cheerleading game, her games in Rantoul. I'm going to buy popcorn. I'm going to spend money. I'm going to try to bring friends. I'm going to do that for Olympia. So let's get to what you're kind of talking about. I've always thought, and this is me kind of going off on my deep end here and my analytical Andy analysis here, but I've always felt like there's so much access to football, with college football being on, with MAC action to Thursday night to Amazon to now it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we're talking about it on Monday and Tuesday, with Stephen A. and everybody. It's just, I think some guys like you and me that would be there on a Saturday or Friday and Saturday, they've already watched it. They've already got their fill. They've already filled their bucket. And so I hate to say this because I still think football is important, but I don't think it's nearly as important as it once used to be. And I think it's saturated to some extent. And so I have concerns about that. I really do, and I'll hand it back over to you because that's my 2 cents.
Yet it wasn't a mirage that I saw during the regular season. And I get out. I was in the Quad Cities. I was up north. I was trying to get out of state as much as, around the state as much as I possibly can. And I saw great crowds during the regular season. I mean, again, there's other factors. Weather. We mentioned weather. Weather was tremendous during the regular season. So we had one night with rain. I think that was it for the whole year. But so, I mean, I guess I'm encouraged that people came out. So they were there. I just don't know where they disappeared to in the postseason. If it was weather related because it started turning colder, or if it was, I don't know what it was. I really don't. And what I don't like about it is I don't know if I can equate it all, if it'll actually add up at X and Y equals Z, less people in the stands, maybe equal more people watching off a stream equals as much or even more interest in high school football. We don't know that. I would assume the IHSA probably knows it because they obviously get attendance numbers for the state finals. They get attendance numbers for the playoffs because they're collecting gate money.
Yeah.
And they're also getting revenue share from NFHS for the stream. Now, again, I'm not saying, hey, open your books, because I know that's not going to happen. People have been fighting that for decades. But what I'm asking for is more from a concern standpoint. Should we be concerned? And until we get those answers, I don't think we can. But believe me, just an observation, and others as well. That's what media, we do a lot of times. We look at those crowds, we compare them, and everyone down there to a man agreed they were considerably down attendance-wise. So,
well, hey, listen, when I watch college football and I watch games at Illinois, I'm going to flat out just say it, and I hope that I don't come across the wrong way to the Champaign media or University of Illinois brass. But when I watch those Illinois games, I notice that camera angle is low.
Right.
Because if Illinois is so-so, there's going to be so-so fans there. If they're good, they come out of the woodwork. Will they ever fill that thing up? It's going to have to be a really special game.
Oh, I think they will. The way they're going to. But I hear what you're saying.
But okay, so here's my point. That's a big stadium, and I've watched a lot of games in that stadium, and I saw the same thing you did, Tim. for whatever angle they had, that drone up there, and they saw those fans. I mean, that looked like you were just taking a bunch of pepper shakers and just sprinkling it on the napkin. I mean, it didn't look like it was
And
very.
that's okay.
Very many people there.
We know we've been going there long enough. We know that we could have 20, 25,000 people at a high school game, and it's not going to look very big in Memorial Stadium. We already know that.
Yeah.
So that's taken into consideration.
Yeah. So here's my two things I want to just say is, like, I think that when we got to those state championship games, you know, I think because the weather, because of maybe the pandemic, because of normalcy, I think there's just a lot of people doing a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Okay? That's my main thing. I think people just do more things besides watching high school football and sports that time of the year with the holidays. Okay, that's my thing. But here's the thing.
I still think they are. I still think they're watching. I just think they're watching more online than they have.
Okay, so that's my second thing. Wherever this is going to be held at, whether it's Illinois State.
Are we getting into this now?
Well, yeah.
We'll get into it now.
Because here's my point, Tim. My point is, even when you go watch an Illinois basketball game, or you go to Redbird Arena, or you go to Hancock Stadium, and I've been to all these places, the viewership and how people watch games is different because they're not watching the game. They're watching the game and they're doing other things while they're watching the game.
Right.
So the behaviors of how we want to watch a game and have access to things, going to the bathroom, good food, great lines, no bathroom waits, and we want to have access to our phone to do things, is changing how we view and how we behave in those settings. And I think the next big thing is I wouldn't be surprised wherever they have it at if they just block off areas, you know, like they kind of do for like a Jacksonville Jaguar football games. They just put
tarps. You mean like a blackout rule?
They don't have a bunch of people.
You mean like a blackout?
I could just see it happening.
I can't.
You know?
I can't, because here's what I think. And again,
the blackout rule, but like confine the areas where people sit at. That's what I'm trying to say. Because
I was thinking more. I was thinking more from the TV standpoint. Okay, I get what you're going.
Sure.
Condense
the
like
crowd, those state championship games.
Yeah.
I hear you. I just feel like those state championship games, they need to be in a smaller venue. And I'll just say that right now.
No, and I think, and we might as well stick on this subject. I think that's what's going to happen. And again, I've been very public. You know, I've been saying this for 2 years. I think the games are going to wind up next year at Illinois State. I really do. I think there's a lot of momentum heading for Illinois State. Renovated Hancock Stadium. Illinois State basically admitting that they screwed up when they let the games go the last time around. In the process of building an indoor practice facility, that's supposed to be done. I'm hearing, I don't know, for April, May, June, that'll be completed. You mentioned smaller venue. I think scheduling wise, it works better for Illinois State because unlike Illinois in the Big Ten, where they have no idea what their schedule is going to look like down the near term future, because of expansion, you've got UCLA, USC joining, whoever the hell else is going to wind up in the Big Ten. It could be even more schools you don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty there. And it's already been mentioned and was brought in the press that Illinois has put a bid in, but it included the rotating of every other year deal. Every indication I've gotten, the IHSA does not want that. It is specifically in this contract specifications that it has to be a 5-year consecutive school hosting. It has to be part of the deal. So if they're going to go letter of the law in the contract, which we know can be worked out and bended and amended, I think that counts Illinois out. Now, to be fair to Illinois, I love Memorial Stadium. It's a great facility. They've done a ton of work there. From a media standpoint, you've been up there. It's like the Taj Mahal compared to everywhere else. It's fantastic. We can't ask for better. When we're in Illinois, you can't ask for better media access, better media facilities. You know, it's really top notch. It's a Big Ten stadium. You've been on that floor during games. It doesn't look great, but it sounds good. And it sounds like a full stadium, maybe not completely packed, but believe me, when you're on that field and those kids are into it, it's a big time atmosphere. So I'd have no problem if IHSA went back to Illinois. I really wouldn't. I have no issue whatsoever with Illinois, and I think the best thing that happened to them as well was the every other year for IHSA and for Illinois, because I think Illinois started getting stale with it a little bit for a while there. I think it, and again, let's be fair. Let's tie into who was coaching and what was going on in that football program. There wasn't a lot going on. Things have changed. Things are going on in that football program now. Much more friendly, much more media friendly, much more friendly to events such as this. They're, IHSA, Illinois, they've opened up to everybody, and they've been doing things the right way.
Yeah.
Northern, I think, really gets shortchanged in this, because I think all Northern did was step up when someone needed to step up. I think they did a great job hosting. Yes, media hates it there, and that's not going to change until they do some major renovations, which I've heard rumblings for the last several years that they're going to. I've been hearing that they're going to upgrade the media facilities for 20 years at Northern, and it still hasn't happened. But no one else cares except us about the media.
Sure.
But what the positives about Northern is that it's a good fan atmosphere. It's smaller. You're right on top of the field. It looks great. It sounds great. I thought it worked pretty well at NIU. So again, I think NIU is going to wind up getting shortchanged in this whole deal, because I just think, yeah, we've been there, we've done that. Let's go somewhere new. I know Southern Illinois. I'm hearing Southern Illinois put a bid in. I'd love to go to Carbondale, but I know no one else up here would want to, and that's going to kill that bid automatically. You're just not going to, especially 5A through 8A, to go 300 plus miles one way for a state final game. Now, if it was a dome, maybe, but not going to happen. Okay. Your thoughts?
Well, I got a couple of thoughts. I'll try to keep them quick. I would just say this. Like you and like many others, I have a lot of great memories of those games being played at Hancock Stadium.
Yeah, a lot of people love them there. They still, to this day, reflect back to when the games were at Hancock. There's a lot of sentimental thoughts.
Even in those broken down wooden bleachers over there, people would sit in there. It was just jam-packed. It was a different time, a different era. You had that at times and moments at Northern, and you had it at times at Illinois, although it's not going to nearly look as great because of the enormity of the stadium. So It's going to be interesting. I want it in a smaller stadium. And I would like to know your opinions on this, and I'll let you answer them because you have more knowledge or maybe more expertise on this. Could you argue that the bigger schools could have a separate location?
Never going to happen.
Okay. And then number two, will there ever be a dome stadium in the state of Illinois?
Yeah, I think it'll be Arlington Heights in about 3-4 years. That's our best chance for a dome.
And I think about that because I think about what Iowa does, and I think about what Indiana does, and
we're the only one.
I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Us and Wisconsin are the only ones that play an outdoor championship game in the upper Midwest. Everyone else is in a dome. Minnesota's in a dome. Missouri was outside at Mizzou this year, but they were playing in the RCA Dome or whatever dome it's called now in St. Louis. Obviously, that's changed. Wisconsin's outside. Indiana's inside. Michigan's inside. So, yeah, I mean, that would be ideal. I think, if the timing works out, this is a 5-year deal coming up for IHSA. If the timing works out, it should work out just right to where if there's an Arlington Heights facility, I guarantee IHSA is going to do everything in their power to get it there. And knowing the Bears and the relationship they've had with IHSA, and they continue to build up that relationship. There's a lot of shared charity wings that are working with the Bears. The coaches award every week. The all-star player, they've done a lot. Bears have done a lot of stuff to up their community involvement. So I think in a heartbeat, IHSA would get the games in Arlington Heights if they eventually build that stadium. What was the other part of that question in the beginning?
Well, and I think
separate locations.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, not going to happen. And I've had this argument with people. I had it with Mike O'Brien from the Sun Times. What people need to realize is a big component of the state finals is television, ironically. It's a big part of what they do. IHSA wants these games on over the air broadcast or as close as they can get it to over the air free broadcast. That's their goal. They want to reach the biggest audience they possibly can. So, just from a cost and a setup and a logistic standpoint, it would be impossible. Not okay. Wouldn't be impossible, but it would be incredibly difficult because you would have to have two separate crews, two separate trucks, two separate complete camera setups, everything. It is a ton of work. It's a ton of extra money for IHSA. And the one thing we know about IHSA, they're not going to spend another dime if they don't have to.
Yep.
It's easier for them to keep it all. And even just logistically, I mean, you're going to expect the IHSA people to work, and you've seen them. They work that day. They are working that day. You're going to ask them to go work on a Friday in, I don't know, Southern Illinois and go up to Northern on Saturday and work another 4 games. Just logistically, it makes no sense at all, cost wise. And TV's the big component. I mean, I love it. I'm up for anything. I don't care. I'll go anywhere to go watch high school football. I've proven that for over 2 decades. But realistically, that's never going to happen. I get that a lot from fans, Matt. So it's a popular question.
Well, and then just to go back to what you're saying about what Indiana does and what Iowa does, I've watched those games and I watched them on TV, and they feel different and they look different. And it is something to think about and ponder and talk about maybe down the road because.
Well, we'll be back. I think we're going to do this. I think we'll do this. I'll tell you right now because, and again, adding on to this, and I want to include this. I talked to a lot of people, as you all know, over the weekend. A lot of IHSA, a lot of coaches, a lot of people that have some real TV. Talk from the TV standpoint as well. Talk to a lot of people that have a say-so in this thing. And to a person, not a peep out of anyone. And all that tells me, and I could be wrong, and if I am, I'll come back here in December and admit it. All we learned was that IHSA said they're expecting to make an announcement on this after the December board meeting on December 7th. I'm anticipating we'll get an announcement on where the games are going then. The point of this being that I just think that when it's all said and done, they're going to wind up being 5 minutes from IHSA headquarters in Bloomington. They're more than willing to give that a try. They're trying to. What I think eventually happens, and I've mentioned this too. Look at where all these sports teams and sports leagues have gone. What they're molting into. Matt, they're all going on their own. The Cubs have their own network and marquee. The White Sox are on NBC Sports Chicago. Now, what happens there in a year or two, nobody knows. All these pro and college sports teams have their own networks. The Yankees have their own network. All these entities have their own network. I wouldn't be shocked in 3-4 years. I'd just say TV might be stream only. It costs them a lot less. They can completely control the production, which means they can completely control the cost. And it still accomplishes in a lot of ways what they're already getting accomplished. So something else to put in the back of the mind when we
down the road. There's a lot of things to talk about. Yeah.
I can see us coming back and doing an emergency one in December to talk about it. So we'll throw it out. All right. Well, we've only nailed 25 minutes of the show. We haven't even talked one of the games yet. So, but there's a lot to get into, and we haven't even talked public-private, which could take another half hour. Let's get into the games real quick. We'll do a recap from 1A through 4A, and then we'll jump. There's a couple other issues I think we need to jump back into before we wrap. Obviously, your 4 quarters and overtime we'll get to as well.
Sure.
All right, so Class 1A, Lena Winslow, 30-8 win over Camp Point Central in the 1A game. Matt, just your thoughts and takeaway from, obviously Lena with a big win and played incredibly well. But, I thought Camp Point definitely hung in there tough for a while and definitely made this one more of a ball game than maybe the score might indicate.
Well, Camp Point had they had their opportunities. They started the game off and they stopped Lena Winslow, and then they got the ball back and they moved the ball a little bit, and then they tried to roll the dice and they didn't execute a fake punt. And if you make mistakes against Lena Winslow, be prepared that they're going to pounce on you like a shark in water. And Lena smelt the blood. And they went after him. It was 16-0 before you could blink your eyes. And then, hey, bottom line is, Camp Point had an opportunity right before half. They did not punch it in. They came out in the second half, had the ball, and just couldn't quite get it going. And before you know it, and I'll talk more about this later. Not for once, they've always been balanced on both sides of the ball. But later on in the four quarters, I'll talk about that defensive side of the ball where Lena really, really flexed their muscles and they shut Camp Point down. But Camp Point's going to have a good football team next year. Brad's got a lot of guys coming back, and Brad, I talked to him today, and he'll tell you, tip your hats off to Lena. They played a good football game. They did what they had to do. Camp Point just came up a little short.
Yeah, I wanted to mention Gage Dunker for leading that ball game. 120 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, had a big game, obviously, for the Panthers, who get yet another. Hey, when are we going to start success factoring in Lena Winslow? I'm kidding. Don't. Oh, I can hear our friends at NUIC football. I joked with him already on Friday about Lena, and let's success factor them up to 3A.
The success factor is that the head boys basketball coach is the offensive coordinator. The head track coach is the special teams coordinator. And, I don't know, like in the 1970s and 80s and maybe early 90s, when teachers wanted to teach and wanted to coach, these guys at Lena Winslow had been there, about 25 years.
Yeah.
And they have a great wrestling program, great track program. They have it going on. They've been fortunate and lucky with some kids, to come to school there and what have you, but it's awfully good coaching. It's awfully good player development, and nothing's really going to change.
Going on to Class 2A, Matt, I thought state final wide, taking in Saturday into account, this might have been one of the best overall games and certainly one of the most entertaining games in 2A. St. T hangs on, gets a 29-22 win over Tri-Valley, and Matt, just a terrific back and forth ball game in this one.
Well, it was a game I kind of predicted, and I don't need no medal or any trophy that I predicted this, but I knew that St. T was the best team in the state, but the best team at the time playing right now was Josh Roop and his Tri-Valley team. Here's a team, here's a product and a brand of Josh going out of the gun, and they were pulling 2 guards, and it was student body left, student body right, and they're giving it to their hoss, Renegade Blake, and just a wonderful, wonderful game. Great atmosphere, great weather. I know there was a little controversy at the end in terms of the clock and what have you, but Josh would tell you firsthand that's not what lost the game for them. They had some opportunities that they squandered, and I'll talk more about this in the 4 quarters. Decatur, when they had to make a big play, they made a big play. And Mark Ramsey did a great job. Britt Miller did a good job of just holding on for dear life with that defense. Because in that first half, it was an 8-8 ball game. Tri-Valley had over 300 yards rushing. They were in control of the game. And it was one of the better high school championship games I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was a really solid game. There's no doubt about it. So, again, congrats to St. Teresa, who wins the 2A state title over Tri-Valley. 3A, Matt, not so much. Immaculate Conception, IC Catholic Prep. They got out of the gates well and rolled to a 48-17 win over Williamsville. And the Knights, Matt, as we talked about all year long, just a really, really special team with a lot of talent, and they showed it Friday afternoon.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say thank you to some of the coaches on the IC staff that came up to me and told me that you and I do a good job, Tim, on our podcast. So that was kind of a shocker. That was new to me. So thank you, IC fans and IC coaching staff. I thought Aaron Coons had a great game plan. He was going to try to bring as much heat, much fast football as he could. And it was very similar to IC's game against Pleasant Plains, a few years ago up in DeKalb. Williamsville tried everything they could to kind of hold on for dear life, keep it close, to play fast on fast. But here's the deal. You play fast on fast against this team, their fast is just a little bit better than your fast.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be a slowed down Princeton, Byron Tiger type of football team that beats that speed and athleticism. And, everything from Denzel Gibson to Parker, they were just dynamite. They were a great team. One of the best teams probably there.
Denzel Gibson was one of the more, it's hard to say he was unsung because, he was one of the keys for them all year. But, I don't know maybe if it was an injury thing or what went down with him. But, regular season, he was getting a lot of carries. And I think it seemed like once the playoffs started, they kind of ended up going to the junior running back. Let me find it. Joey Galata, who again only had tremendous playoff games. So it's not like, he was just filling in, biding time. Joey put up some huge numbers in the playoffs, but IC found their way back to Denzel, and you saw what he's able to do. He's a big back who runs really well, runs with power. And then again, just, Mandela, the quarterback, just does a really nice job, manages that offense really well. And then you mentioned guys like KJ Parker, who are just difference makers. They're game breakers. And just a little bit too much for Williamsville. So again, congratulations to IC. See, man, I told you there's a few people that watch this thing.
Well, there was a lot of highlights of the weekend, and I'm not saying it was a great big highlight, but it was a surprise, and it made me feel good. He came right. I can't think of his name. One of the defense coordinator guys or whatever. He's like, hey.
Oh, maybe Matt Bowen. Might have been Matt Bowen, I bet.
They came right up to me like, hey, good job. And I was like, who are you? No, hey, we listen to it all the time. Good job. And I was like, thank you. That really makes me feel good. So they had a great team, and they were just dynamite.
Yep. And again, Class 4A, congratulations to Ken Leonard. It's a fairy tale ending, Matt. That's what we talked about. I talked about it at playoff pairing night. I just had a feeling that all the moons were aligned, and if they could get by that one moon in the semifinal, they'd really have a good shot. And sure enough, a 44-20 win for Ken Leonard, goes out with a win, goes out with a state title. And the story is completed. He goes out a winner and goes out with a state title. You can't ask to go out any better than the way Ken Leonard did.
Well, again, another neat moment for me was just having my son to be around there and see that. The Leonard family, they've welcomed me with open arms. Derek and the whole family was down there on the turf at the end of the game. Talked to my son. Me and my son went out to the middle of the field to listen to Kenny talk to the guys briefly with a quick prayer. It was neat. I didn't know this, but it was neat to see Coach Ken Leonard talk with Norm Esch at Illinois Wesleyan, and they were high school teammates at Chenoa High School back in the day for Ed Thomas. And then on kind of another interesting note, the lead referee for the 4A crew was Dean Magro, who used to be the head coach at Chenoa in 1996 when he won a state championship. So, but Springfield Sacred Heart Griffith, the Cyclones. I thought it was a great game early. I thought Providence kind of muddied it up, but really played hard. But then I just thought athleticism and strength took over for Ken's team. And then the second half, they just poured it on. And, congratulations to Ken. He's done great things for high school football, and a state championship in his last game just speaks volumes.
What I thought was really cool, and I talked to Tyler Plants last night on our final Pigskin preview on WJOL. They had a long discussion in the handshake line, and I asked Tyler, I said, can you share with us what Ken said to you?
I saw that too. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And he did. And he said, he talked about, how hard it is to get to this stage and to enjoy it and to really take it all in. And because it goes by so fast, and you get those few moments where you actually get your team to where you want to get your team. And I just thought he gave, and Tyler said the same thing. That Ken just gave some really, really clear advice, and said, ironically, that was the same advice that Matt Sefner had given him early in the year about, wins and losses, they come and go, but you've got to take in the experiences while they're there. You've got to appreciate what you have and the kind of team you have and the kind of kids you have. And again, exactly what you would expect from Ken Leonard, just first class all the way. And Tyler said, gave him some terrific advice. And again, big fan of what Tyler Plants did this year. We made him the WJOL Area Coach of the Year last night. First year takes them 5-4. They end up getting into the state title game. So that's no small accomplishment for a rookie coach. And again, that program is going to continue to do a lot of good things. But again, some interesting storylines in 4A, and I thought some really good advice from Ken Leonard, which that part of it's no surprise.
Not a surprise, wonderful family. And they were all down there from everywhere, from South Carolina to everybody. The whole family was there.
Yeah.
And I got to experience it and shake a lot of hands and meet a lot of people. And it was just a neat atmosphere.
No doubt about it. So again, in the books, we've talked about where we think the state finals will go. We talked about attendance. Do we even dare getting into public-private yet, or we'll talk just a little bit about it? Yeah. So obviously it was a big weekend, state final weekend for the privates or Catholic schools, whatever you want to call them. 6 out of 8 ended up winning state titles. And Matt, it's from my perspective, it's like death and taxes. They're both going to happen whether you like it or not. And every year around this time, people are going to moan and complain and gripe about public-private. It just happens every year. They'll complain for a week or so, and then it subsides, and then we don't hear much about it. I don't know your thoughts. I don't know how deep we want to get into this. I have an entire message board that's open 24 hours, 7 days a week. You can come vent your frustrations and talk about it with many, 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 many others that do it. And I've said this for a while now, Matt. If people truly want to get rid of publics and private and they want to separate them, talk to your principal, have them talk to a couple of their principal friends, propose it, take it to the IHSA, vote on it, and be done with it. One way or the other, be done with it. Because all we're doing is creating more divisiveness, more problems between them. IHSA, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to have a big problem with it. I know there are obviously pros and cons on both sides. I get it. I understand it. I'm a public guy. I didn't go to a Catholic high school. I went to a public high school, but I obviously understand the Catholic side of it as well. If you want, bring it up for a vote and resolve it. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. I really don't.
Well, I agree with you 100%. I think anything that is complained about or griped about, which some of us are doing right now, or people want to do it right now, until we get into basketball season, is get your schools involved, get people involved, get a town hall involved. Send a complaint to your athletic director to see if they can give it to the principal, to take it to the regional director that goes to the IHSA that's on the football committee or the sportsmanship committee. That's the only way it's going to happen. And I will just say this: when I lived in Champaign and I lived in Rantoul, and I was coaching at Fisher for the longest time, and I'm Catholic, St. Thomas More was kind of one of those teams that kind of was looked at as like everybody's going to go there and they're going to do really good. And they did for a while. And now there's not as many people going there. And I'll just say this. Right. I think sometimes more than people want to realize, I think this goes in cycles too. Too. Because,
no doubt.
Because there's not a lot of people right now that have extra income to maybe send their kids to those private schools as much as they want to.
Matt, it's never been harder. There's never been. They will tell you up and down the line, especially up here in the Chicagoland area, a lot of numbers have dwindled. At best case scenario, they've maintained. Best case
because
scenario.
those prices have gone up at those schools. So not everybody has that extra disposable income to send their kids. And I'll just say down here, 1A, you're not necessarily going to see it anymore. Back in the day, Sterling Newman maybe dipped down to 1A, but now they're 2A. But in 2A down here, St. Teresa's kind of hot. But you know what? I could argue and say so is Maroa, so is Athens, so is Johnson City. So there's a lot of schools that are really, really tough. In 3A, you could argue, like there's a couple of private schools that are kind of maybe above everybody, same with 4A and above. But at the same time, you could argue, you know what? Let's get back to the argument that Matt and Tim have all the time, and that is the rich just keep getting richer because they have these programs. So I don't really feel sorry for a lot of our public schools because it's the same old schools. It's the same old schools. I mean, Princeton, Byron, Sycamore. You could just go on and on and on. It's not always about these private schools, and I think sometimes it goes in ebb and flows with everything.
There's various outlets out there that cover high school football, and the ones that do a really good job, I'm very vocal about and like to promote and give them a shout out whenever we can. And the guys from View from the West and NUIC football do that podcast, View from the West. They do a terrific job, and I was able to catch part of their podcast this week, and they talked about public-private and, the various issues. And one of the hosts, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, but mentioned that things changed when like Marion Central Catholic started getting good, because that was a rarity back then. That was a small school private. There weren't a lot of those, and there weren't a lot that were getting really good. But Ed Brucker and that program really started getting good and started beating some of the smaller enrollment public powers. And then it seems like ever since then, that's when things people really started to take notice, which I thought was interesting. It was a really good observation, which I agree with. But again, Matt, I just think, what'll change is we'll get another 2-year enrollment cycle starting this year. The multiplier will come back. The success factor will come back, which people don't realize we did not have for 2 years.
Yeah.
That's why you saw the JCAs in 4A and Sacred Heart in 4A and, Mount Carmel in 7A and some other schools that were considered much lower enrollment wise where they generally had been with those rules in place. I think those rules come back for 2023. I think things will subside. And like you said, it's cyclical.
Yeah.
More years. If you do the research over the past 5 to 7 years, there's been a considerable amount more of public schools that have won state titles compared to Catholic or private. So
bottom line is if Maroa wins against let's say St. Teresa gets beat in the semifinals or gets beat by Athens, and they're not there. And what about Princeton almost beating IC? We wouldn't be talking about this tonight.
Yeah, and I love then
you would be 4 public, 4 private. So like I said,
and I love there were a few funny tweets that I saw out there. One was congratulations St. Lena of Winslow on your 1A state title. The other was is East St. Louis? Can we make them a Catholic school now because there's a saint in their name? I thought it was funny. So no. You didn't. That's okay.
And that's the whole conversation there too, with like.
Oh, I know.
And I'll just say this real quickly, like that area, it's that area and it's that culture and it's that climate, and it is what it is, and so just success breeds success.
You want to talk about state of the game? What do you want to talk about? Go.
Well, I could kind of do that at the end of my Lions 4 quarters.
You got it. That's fine.
I'll do it with my overtime talk, and then I'll let you talk about it a little bit.
We're 45 minutes in. Let's go to 4 quarters.
Okay, let's do it.
Ready?
You got it.
All right, Class 1A.
We got to tell them what the theme is.
I'm coming. Hang on. I got you taken care of. So the 4 quarters, WWE top finishing moves. Okay. Now, I know you're obviously a huge wrestling guy. I know a lot of people who watch this are huge wrestling people. I'm not. I used to be years ago. I'm not anymore because I grew
I
up.
would love to know. I would love to know the old school finishing moves. And I think when we next have our next podcast, I want some old. Yeah, no. Don't shake your head at me. I want Bruno Sammartino, Vern Gagne. I want some of those old moves.
Dick the Bruiser.
Exactly. The Claw.
All right, you goof. Here you go. Class 1A. Let's see what you got here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I should be more prepared. So Class 1A, The Undertaker, who I actually do like The Undertaker.
Oh,
The Undertaker, The Undertaker, and the Tombstone. Please describe, sir.
First of all, I think EDGYTIM's making fun of me and making fun of this idea. And
No, I like The Undertaker. I love the fact that it takes him
Tim,
20 minutes to get in the ring.
It can't be about video games and candy all the time, okay?
Why not? You could have done cereal.
Maybe I will next time.
All right, Vern Gagne, let's go. Okay. 1A.
All right, Dick the Bruiser. Okay, so here we go. Lena Winslow did their best impression of The Undertaker, okay? They delivered the Tombstone in the third quarter. I told you that I was going to talk about something that we usually don't talk about with Lena, and that's their defense. Their defense in the third quarter was phenomenal, but they delivered with a defensive presence and a mentality of an 18-play, 67-yard drive that chewed up 10 minutes and 41 seconds off the third and fourth quarter clocks to really lock down that latest state title. I thought they were great defensively, but they delivered that Tombstone, that Undertaker Tombstone pile driver with a big play, long, drawn out. I'm going to hold on the ball. I'm going to flex my muscles. We're better than you. We're bigger than you. Not this year, Camp Point. Maybe next year. Lena, they were the Undertaker. They were the Tombstone.
All right, Class 2A, Shawn Michaels, Sweet Chin Music.
Okay, so on this one, St. Teresa Senior Billy Geist delivered some Sweet Chin music to Tri-Valley several times throughout this game. He intercepted a pass from the Vikings quarterback, Andy Knox, at the Bulldogs' 1-yard line. He batted away a fourth down pass attempt catch from Knox in St. Teresa's end zone and recorded what turned out to be the game-winning touchdown catch from St. Teresa Bulldog quarterback Joe Brummer on a 9-yard effort midway through the fourth quarter. I thought he delivered that Sweet Chin music, that kick, that knockout blow several times with big plays in that 2A thriller. And it was one of the best games I've seen. And love him or hate him, Shawn Michaels is Mr. Electrifying, and Billy Geist is Mr. Electrifying.
Class 3A, The Rock. I can't do the eyebrow thing. The Rock and the People's Elbow.
So The Rock does the People's Elbow and does all that stuff. I think the bottom line is Denzel Gibson, the 6-foot, 200-pound IC Catholic running back, dropped the Rock's People's Elbow on Williamsville time and time again. He carried the ball 10 times for 140 yards, 2 touchdowns, and delivered a 51-yard touchdown run at the end of the second and opened the third quarter with a 34-yard TD run that opened the floodgates for IC Catholic. It was never the same. And Denzel Gibson, he literally was the elbow that really brought down the heat and really took care of business against Williamsville.
No doubt about it. Totally agree. And then finally in Class 4A, the Stone Cold Stunner. You want me to do my Stone Cold?
No.
I can.
There you go.
Now this is a beer, by the way. Okay. This is not your average can.
Okay.
This is a
Modelo.
24-ounce beer. Okay.
There you go.
I'm not going to do that.
Stone Cold usually goes with Busch Light or Budweiser or something like that. But
I have better taste. That's okay.
Stone Cold Steve Austin with the stunner. It's an electrifying, powerful finishing move. I dressed up as Stone Cold Steve Austin for theme week at Olympia. So there you go. But senior quarterback Ty Lott, he did his best Stone Cold Steve Austin's stunner at big moments in this game to help the head coach ride off with another state title. And it's not the easiest pick. His lots of numbers weren't out of this world. He was 12 of 26 passing for 214 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's still pretty good. But he provided stability and key plays when the SHG offense really needed them. And he connected with seniors Maddox Morris, Jake Hamilton, and Bill Sanders on one scoring pass apiece. He literally was the stone cold stunner. He was the guy that really kind of just knocked them out.
Yeah, they just had really good talent.
Hits. They had
really
hits.
Good talent level.
And they looked different when they came on the field. They looked it and they did it for everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you that there were some real hard decisions when I came up with my all-state team. And, that's one where there were 2 or 3 of those kids that could have easily slotted in, or
Sure.
maybe they didn't slot in. But, and again, as a unit, that was a really good offense. There's no doubt about it. And then finally, overtime, Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, a flair for the dramatic. Sir?
Well, I just think that, this week, 1A through 8A, I think it was good football. I think for 1A through 4A, which is what we talk about, I think it was a good state championship series. And I think it showed and proved, that 1A through 4A, we got great football. I mean, we have one of the perennial powers in high school football right now in Lena Winslow. No one's beating them until someone beats them. They are the king of the block. I thought in 2A, you just really had a neat moment there. That was a great game. I think 3A, IC just really flexed their muscles. And then in 4A, come on, guys. We had history being made. I told my son, I was like, as I'm sitting there and Derek's welcoming as he's taking care of his kids and everything, everybody's crying. I'm like, I put my son on my shoulders and I let him look at Ken Leonard talking to the masses out there on the 50-yard line. I mean, we saw history, and love it or hate it, it was a good moment for high school football. So that leads me into a flair for the dramatic. It was a dramatic thing at the end, and I think the state of our game is good. I think there's pressing concerns. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with our game in terms of numbers, in terms of how viewership and how people are going to watch games. But overall, I think we've made a comeback.
We have
since the pandemic. And I think our 4 games on that Friday were living proof, because the football gods were nice to us and we didn't have a cloud in the sky. And it was at the University of Illinois. So overall, I think it was a great moment. It was a Ric Flair type of Hulk Hogan type of moment. And, I'm glad I was there, and I'm glad I worked with you, and I think it was a great thing. And I hope to see our game get better and better and better, because I think there's a lot of great stories and a lot of great little tidbits, 1A through 8A, all the way from Carbondale to Rockford to Quincy to Danville.
Yeah, totally agree. Again, kudos to IHSA. I know they catch a lot of grief, and sometimes deservedly so. I'm the first one to say, I don't like something, I'll be more than vocal about it. As you all know, I don't hold back too often, but they also do some really good work, and they do a fine job of putting that state finals on. It's not easy. It's a lot of people to shuttle in and out, and they get a lot done. I know the games ran late, especially on Saturday. Hey, you look at that 5A game and then that 6A game, it's just going to happen. You're just going to have games that are going to be tight and back and forth and stop and clock.
You start the game at 10 o'clock in the morning, folks. I don't know what else you can do.
Well, it's been discussed. That'll be for one of our overtime sessions when we come back in the off season here and talk about it. I'm sure these will be things we'll bring up in early December when we come back and meet on this again. Well, next week possibly we'll end up doing it, but we'll discuss it then. But yeah, again, and then in the meantime, before we wrap up, just want to thank the coaches, want to thank the fans out there, everyone that's watched. As I've told you, the viewership numbers for this, for some strange reason, there must be, I don't know, your girlfriends that watch this or something, because People just
They
seem to
must, they
continue.
must click the buttons or something.
Yeah. Someone must continue to find this thing or something, because people keep watching it and it's awesome. And we love doing it. We hope you guys love watching it. Love the feedback from you. And we're going to continue. Like I said, we're going to hop in from time to time when we need to, and we'll talk about some issues. And if we do that, we're probably going to bring in some guests. I would like to get another semi-regular, maybe quarterly, little bit of a podcast, and maybe bring in a state championship coach or one of the 8-man guys and find out what's going on with them, and just try to keep people involved and try to keep them updated in the off season. So that's kind of my plans. And to you, I know that you're busy, you've got a full life and you've got kids and dealing with that. But I know how crazy you are and how much you love this. And that's the one thing we definitely share in common. So always fun, Matt. Never had a bummer doing these with you yet. And I don't think
A lot of fun. And I'd like to thank all the people that are going out there and going to the games and
Yep.
that know the information. Thanks to my special friend, Mitch Wilson, to everybody,
Yep.
all the coaches. There's some coaches I talk to more than others. And there's a lot of coaches that really communicate well with me. And I just know that next Sunday, I'll be at the Illinois High School Football Coaches Association annual meeting in Champaign. We'll be talking about our clinic. That'll be happening at the end of March. It happens right around the Final Four. Football, I think, is in a different state right now with Brett Bielema as the head coach at Illinois, and I think football is good in our state right now.
I think you're on the verge. I think you're on the verge of a clinic that's really going to take off starting next year.
Yep.
I really do.
No, it will. People are excited, and we got it at the I Hotel. That's for another talk, but I'll just tell you this, Tim, thank you for allowing me to do this, because I've met a lot of good people, and thank you for everybody that helps out. It's not just me.
Yep.
And everybody wants to talk about their team or knows someone that wants to talk about the team, and I do the best I can, and I come up with some goofy and quirky ideas. But obviously, I'm going to have to start buying more cereal. I'm going to have to buy more cereal.
Yep. It's one of our most popular ones that we talk about every year. We start talking about breakfast cereals and people just lose their minds. So everyone has an opinion. Everyone's very
I'm going to have to
opinionated.
expand my candy palette. I'm going to have to get a candy jar or something. I don't know.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
I still have room to improve on my evaluation with you, and I'll just have to come up with better ideas.
Sounds good. All right, pal. So for the coach, Matt Leng, I'm EDGYTIM. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it. Have a terrific offseason. We'll be back soon. Trust me. We'll be back when there's something that we need to hop in and talk about.
When I get a cereal deal the next time I go out grocery shopping, that's when I'll be back on the show.
There you go. All right. For Matt Leng, I'm EDGYTIM. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you hopefully sooner rather than later.